Hey guys, it's Matt. This is proof of not milk times about a billion. About 2 days ago, a company on YouTube called OTOY or OTOY, working with all the original creators of Star Trek, the Roddenberry Foundation, Paramount Pictures that owns Star Trek, released a 10-minute movie that wraps up Star Trek, wraps up the Captain Kirk, Leonard Nimoy, Spock generation of Star Trek. It is almost entirely AI. It's deep faked. There's almost no dialogue, and it is off the charts in terms of these words that I like to make fun of: occult and esoteric symbolism, and the difference between the elect and the profane, and the initiated and the great unwashed, and all that horse shit. But this is the very definition of proof of not milk. The people will watch this. Oh, it's so wonderful. They brought a close to Star Trek. This is riddled with their symbolism, esoteric, occult. I don't know exactly what it means. I don't care what it means. The symbolism is for them. Remember that, guys. We don't need one bit of it. It's very interesting to analyze. These creeps do business in really unique and interesting ways. We're going to analyze it, but we don't need one bit of it. It's always for them. The next 2 minutes or less of this video, I'm going to describe what happens here in 765-874 Unification for the long haul truckers. If you're the type of person that just has to see this before continuing with my video, the link's below. But there's nothing that happens. It's just there's no dialogue. Kirk drifts through a very surreal environment. It's very similar to the end of 2001, A Space Odyssey. In my opinion, he has died. He goes back to something which resembles the Nexus, which was the first Star Trek movie it's called Generations, I believe, that combined Captain Picard with Captain Kirk. I guess it is a little bit hard for me to describe. If you have a ton of time, I guess go watch it now, but please come back here. It's long, it's drawn out, and it does get a lot of Major League Star Trek fans emotional. The reason they're getting emotional is because it just gives the people a glimpse of what was, the greatness of what was, starting in 1965, 1966, with the first pilot episode called The Cage. My theory here is from the first pilot in 1966, the entire map or script of Star Trek was mapped out through what was just released by OTOY 2 or 3 days ago. It was laid down over 50 years ago. This is consistent with how they do business. Everything is interlinked and related. The message here, I believe, is huge, and it relates back. Now, you could take whatever symbolism away just if you want to break down this 10-minute short film, which, again, everything's deep faked. There's an actor walking, and they just mask via AI Kirk or William Shatner's face on top. You could take a lot of symbolism away from just this, but it actually relates back to the first pilot. Pilot. Out with it, Junior! It all relates, which is so proof of not milk, which means the message was laid down, not episode by episode on the fly, but over 60 years ago. And if it was laid out over 60 years ago, it probably was first created and sketched out back in Mystery Babylon, whatever the heck that is. Okay, guys, I sat here for a few minutes, and there's no possible way I can continue to summarize it. We need to just dive into one element at a time, understand each element and the way it's being presented, and I'll do my best to try to tie it all together at the end. But there's no way to do this up front, giving you a preview of I need to do each element at a time. There's just too much here. It's too off the charts. So again, 2 to 3 days ago, this website, YouTube channel, OTOY, comes out with what is going to be considered the final little Star Trek mini movie. It's associated with Gene Roddenberry, William Shatner, Captain Kirk, executive producer, as well as Paramount Pictures, which makes it canon, which means it's considered to be the official and approved story. The opposite of that would be if I wrote a little mini short story about Luke Skywalker running off to the Castro district in San Francisco, that wouldn't be approved by George Lucas and the fans as part of the lineage of the story. They decided to go with that horrible Rey character as canon, if you can believe that. But that's what canon means. This is official. And it is a little weird not-milk bow that wraps everything that was before it up, planned 60 years in advance. So, of course, we have to start with, what does 765874 mean? What does it code to? Yeah, I ran it through the gematria calculators. I'll get to the gematria. I'll get to that. Okay, just relax. But those going to the gematria calculators, just relax and put your feet up. I got you covered. Did all that horse shit. Or what does 765874 unification mean? Well, it goes back to the initial pilot episode of Star Trek, where William Shatner wasn't even the Captain Kirk. It was a pilot from 1966 that failed. Based on its failure, they thought Star Trek wouldn't even continue. There was a Captain Pike in charge of the Enterprise, played by an actor, I forget his name. The initial pilot was called The Cage, and I believe it relates right back to what this OTOY put out just a few days ago, all planned in advance. It was a pilot episode which only aired once, and the audience doesn't like it. We're not going to be able to move forward with Star Trek. It's a failure. And then you all know the rest of the story. They tried again with William Shatner. Now it's a success. I'm saying it's all planned out, but let's just take it one step at a time. In the initial pilot called The Cage, with Captain Pike, no William Shatner, but Spock was in it. Leonard Nimoy was the only one that went forward with the new series. There was a insignificant, or relatively insignificant, character, Yeoman Colt. Yes, I forget the name of the young actress, 28-year-old young actress that played Yeoman, which is like ensign, Colt, C-O-L-T. Her Starfleet number is 765874. Now, you're telling me, that the little 10-minute movie that is canon, that wraps up the entire 60-year legacy of Star Trek, is titled after a relatively unknown character named Yeoman Colt that made, a 25-minute appearance in the pilot, who then did not continue with the Star Trek series when all the, Sulu and Spock and Kirk and Chekhov and all of them went forward. This Yeoman Colt did not go forward with the first two seasons of Star Trek. So, you're naming the final wrap-up, one of the most important things ever done in Star Trek, after an unknown character from the first episode called The Cage. The purpose, of course, is to tie them together or create bookends with the very first pilot, The Cage. Yeah, we'll talk about the meaning of that title a little bit later and link it to what this OTOY just did with 765874, but to tie them together, to tie the very last to the very first. And if anybody's a real Star Trek fan, I know that this OTOY's put out over the last few years a few different AI or deepfake little tiny movies using the same number in preparation for the monster Symbolism 10-minute movie that they just dropped. Now here we go with this profane versus the elect horse shit. To the fans, it's just fun. Oh, isn't that fun? Oh my god, they really did that? They titled it, but what it is. I figured it out. 765874. There's this character in the pilot called Yeoman Colt, and all the final little short segments in the movie, the final segment, which is canon, it's just for fun. They tied it to one of the original characters in the pilot, to the profane. See, it's just fun. That's not symbolism. That's just pretty pictures. That's the difference. See, they laugh. They laugh at the great unwashed. We don't really care what they mean by it, but at least we notice it. And yes, first grade truthers, this is for you. I had to do it here. The gematria, the gematria. I had to run it through the stupid calculators. This is for you. 765874, ordinal, reduction, reverse reduction, 37, 37, 37, 37. Well, any number always comes out the same. That's not unusual. Only when you have letters is it different. 37. Well, let's get back to potentially what this means. I just want to show you what it comes out to in terms of the gematria. Now, after each segment, as it builds, we're going to have to do the My Cousin Vinny identical. Say model car, entire. We're going to need to do this so we don't forget. The title of the final short story canon movie that wraps up all 60 years of Star Trek is tied back to the original pilot and a relatively unknown character. Identical. All right, let's do 3 minutes or a little bit less on the first pilot episode called The Cage. The Cage by itself can be considered to be a gigantic truth drop as to how this reality works. If the rest of Star Trek didn't even exist, The Cage is significant on its own. So it's not, again, William Shatner, Captain Kirk, it's Captain Pike. There's a distress call. There's this planet called Telos or something like that. A distress call, they investigate, they take an away team down, and there are these aliens, the one on the left there with a large skull and brain, have lured them in as a trap because these Telosians need, I believe, both men and women to repopulate their planet. There's only a few of them left. It's absolutely an Adam and Eve situation that's confirmed right from the very end of the movie, The Cage, where Yeoman Colt there on the left, not the bald woman with the giant head, the one that looks like a regular woman, says to Pike, who, if we didn't, obviously they get out. There's always a happy ending at the end of Star Trek. I'm not giving that away. She said, who would you have chosen? What? As your Eve, right at the end of the episode, who would you have chosen as your Eve? If he is, in this case, if he would have agreed to stay or been trapped, he would have been Adam to repopulate. The Genesis reference is already in the episode, yet you have that to close, which completely, we're going to, identical, don't forget this part, tied into Genesis 1 of the Bible, completely intentionally. So just to wrap this up, 1 minute or less, the Telosians, it's a planet devoid of any life. It's all rock and deserty, and they create, through mind control and the big brains and the big skulls, they create illusions. And at first it seems very nice, and it's not just desert with no grass and no trees. It's lush, and I'm just making this stuff up. It's like this. Commander or Captain Pike thinks he's eating this 5-course lobster and crab and soufflés, and it's just a dried snail on a rock. I mean, it's all an illusion. And of course, what happens? Of course, they start to see through the illusion. Commander Pike starts to be able to put himself in an emotional state. In this case, it's anger, which is maybe to throw us off, but he can put himself in an emotional state where the mind control of the Telosians no longer works on him. In the show, it's presented as anger, but maybe it's, I don't think, to you and me, it's not anger. They couldn't give too much away, right? So, of course, I'm not giving anything away. They escape, and they have some sort of an agreement at the end with the Telosians. They don't act as the Adam and Eve to repopulate the way the Telosians once wanted. But you have so many elements. The cage itself, a positioned as superior race, presenting an illusion or a crafted manipulation because for what they can't do themselves, an outcome they can't achieve on their own. So there's a lot of things here, guys. We could probably do an hour just on this episode, but I've got to try to move on and link this up with the final 10-minute little mini movie that just dropped. Look at this. Let's spend 1 minute or less on this, and it relates to what we're talking about. Remember, what they're putting out is for the elect, or eat, and it's for themselves with the esoteric messages. It's not for the profane. It's just a send-off for Star Trek. It's just, you're going to miss your Captain Kirk and Spock. For the profane and the great unwashed, it means, to you and I, Humpty Dumpty, it means what we say it means. But I like the advice here. And the answer here relates to the Bible, but it relates to everything, not just the Bible. Anyway, gotquestions.org, someone asks, how can I know if I'm one of the elect? Hey, buddy, let me give you a hint. If you have to ask, you ain't. If you have to ask how much it costs, then you can't afford it. If you have to ask if your bloodline is the Queen's, then it's not. But here, that's all for fun. That's all horseshit. I love the back part of the answer. The Bible nowhere instructs us to be concerned regarding our status of elect or non-elect. Exactly. That can be applied to anything. Trying to achieve a status or a title or an initiation or trying to prove your bloodline is of this or that. It's all horseshit. I love the advice here. The Bible nowhere instructs us to be concerned. We don't give a shit regarding our status of elect versus non-elect. Who are you to yourself? Who were you before you incarnated? It's all that matters. What about yourself? What you need to do here for yourself, not achieving a status or being considered the... I don't care what they consider me. I don't care if they consider me the great unwashed, the profane. They can have their dumbass titles. It's horse shit. This is excellent advice. Thank you, Got Questions. All right, let's look at the elements of the final Star Trek movie, at least for the Spock and Kirk era, the one that ends it all, which is canon, 765874, Unification. And in terms of where this is going, let me read the only dialogue in the entire 10-minute movie. This, and only this, is said by Captain Kirk towards the end. I'll read it twice. "There are always possibilities," Spock said. "And if Genesis is indeed life from death, I must return to this place again." One last time. "There are always possibilities," Spock said. "And if Genesis is indeed life from death, I must return to this place again." The only other text, the only other words, is what's in the very beginning. How we deal with death is at least as important as how we deal with life. All right, let's not get ahead of ourselves. One element at a time. For those that aren't giant Star Trek fans, Star Trek II with Khan and 3 are about the Genesis device, a technology that brings life to a lifeless planet. Spock is killed and basically comes back to life because the Genesis device brings life back to him. Of course, remember the Genesis reference at the end of the pilot, the cage. Yeoman Colt on the right asks Captain Pike, if the Telosians would have been successful and we really were trapped there, as Adam, Captain Pike, who would you have chosen to be Eve? That is the book of Genesis from the Bible, of course. And on the left there, that is the first officer who, interestingly enough, Pike refers to her as number one. The first officer, of course, Spock was never referred to as number one, yet that was carried forth in Star Trek The Next Generation, as Picard referred to Riker almost exclusively as number one, rarely calling him Will or Riker. So it's another Star Trek series that makes a very direct link back to the pilot. Are they trying to link to the pilot? It seems so. It really does. It's all interconnected, in my opinion. There are always possibilities, Spock said. And if Genesis, in this case, at the surface level, is the Genesis device from the Wrath of Khan and the movie that came after it, is indeed life from death. Now, this back end, Kirk is saying, I must return to this place again. Well, this is blatant talk of recycle, reincarnation. Channels like the Forever Conscious Research channel will latch onto this and analyze it in the light of soul trap. He should. Mark, why shouldn't he? That's basically what's being presented here. But we don't know if it's for them. It's a statement about the recycle and return, which may be necessary from creeps, from the Jared Kushners of the world, and their role here as what Tony called sequential incarnations, or it applies to us. That would be the debate here. Again, you know what I feel about recycling and soul trap and the trick and everything, like how I'm not concerned about it, whether it exists or not. I've done the work here to see through the trick. If there's a trick there or past the moment of death, then I'll see through the trick there because I've done the work here. Doesn't concern me. One last time, if we focus on it all day and all night, we may help to manifest it. We are necessary in reality creation in this world. I don't think this world exists without us, Kabbalion, all is mind, etc. But when analyzing this Star Trek, at least the final OTOY 10-minute presentation, and what Kirk says here, is it related to them or to us? And then we have to keep in mind the pilot back from 1966, The Cage, which could change our interpretation of what's being presented in this OTOY final 10-minute movie. So let's go through the elements, and I'll describe what happens in the 10-minute movie, keeping all of this in mind. It starts off with what appears to be Captain Pike from the original pilot floating in fire. Who knows what this means? In the beginning, weird imagery that only stays on screen sometimes a half second to 1 second at a time. Kirk finds himself, to me, back inside the Nexus. If you haven't seen Star Trek Generations, where he meets Picard in this energy ribbon, which is like a paradise, which is like Euphoria, a perfect place called the Nexus they become trapped in for a short time. It's like he's in the Nexus, but to me, he's dead. Okay, this is the presentation that this 765874 is presenting, that death is like the Nexus. He sees friends, he sees Savick from the Wrath of Khan and some others that he knows, and his beautiful garden, very much like, Genesis. And let's just continue. So Kirk is walking through this beautiful garden, Eden maybe, with perfect weather, friendly faces, beautiful grass. It is like a breadcrumb of magenta flowers on the ground. I don't think we can not notice that. The magenta is not overwhelming in this at all, but when he's following the path, little flowers, some could say pink, a little bit of magenta. Let's just leave the whole magenta conversation out of this for now, at least. Then after all the friendly faces and beautiful fauna and flora, he's confronted with this. Now, he's not attacked. This being is not evil. I think this is a real Star Trek character from one of the more recent Star Trek series, like the Horrible, Dreadful, Awful Discovery, or that even worse, Strange New Worlds. He's not threatened in any way. The music is beautiful, but this person's very serious and seems a little bit pissed off. But the tone of the 10-minute movie doesn't change. He just comes across this character who, in a very stern way, reaches out and hands him something. When he takes it from this character that hands it to him, when he takes it in both hands, the environment changes. We'll show you that in the next image or two. Everything changes in terms of this Garden of Eden where Kirk is. And yes, many may interpret that is this the archonic being that is at death or responsible for those that talk about the trap. Of course, I'm not just going to pretend that that's not possible. It seems likely in the way this is presented. But again, is Kirk one of us or is Kirk one of them, like a Jared Kushner? Let's just not get ahead of ourselves. Beautiful Garden of Eden, which is the Nexus is like that, but it's also very similar to the Garden of Eden in Genesis 1. All the friends are there and the loved ones and people smiling. Lieutenant Savick, perfect weather. And then this being he's by himself. He's not with the others. He's not attacking. He's not threatening other than his looks. Kirk approaches calmly. The music is still beautiful. And he hands Kirk something. Kirk seems to take it with one hand. He doesn't give it up. Kirk has to take it with both hands. The choice to take it with both hands. As soon as he agrees to take whatever that thing or that being offers him, taking it again with two hands, which is like really being clear about the choice to take it, he's transported into this weird netherworld, dark place where he sees various versions of himself. If they had unlimited AI ability, it seems like they would show every single Kirk in every single iteration. So you see the three main ones: the original Kirk from 1966, the one from the Wrath of Khan, and the Kirk that was 15 years older that was with Picard in Genesis. So three different iterations. But this is very similar to the end of 2001: A Space Odyssey. In a way. I immediately, and there's one other thing that ties in the end of 2001: A Space Odyssey in another OTOY production that I'll show you. But remember, 2001, at the end, it's just very strange. He goes into the black hole. There's 15 minutes of color and music. And then at the very end, Bowman in that white room, remember, looks in the mirror and then he changes to an old man. Then he changes to a baby. Then it's back to Bowman. And then Bowman in a robe, Bowman in a spacesuit. Different iterations or reflections of himself in this off to the side netherworld. That's very similar to where Kirk is at this point in the OTOY 10-minute presentation. But what's significant is after he took whatever that character, that being offered him, the being, again, if anybody's crying out Archon, I hear you. Why shouldn't you? But the being, I believe I heard is not, I don't know, but I think I heard not an evil being from Discovery or whatever Star Trek, not somebody that's out to get Kirk, but maybe it is evil. But remember, it was in a Star Trek uniform, and when Kirk approaches it, it was in no way threatened. That character was on its own, that creature, but it was still part of the beautiful, idyllic scene of the Nexus or of the Garden of Eden. And then takes it from him, boom, here he's in some sort of black netherworld. And then just like 1 second later, Kirk finds himself standing before the light. Uh-oh. Matt, where he was a few seconds before, all the different iterations of himself, that was the life review. Really? Pootie Tang Award on you. Well, we need to at least point that out. Of course, that's potentially what it was. Then he finds himself standing before the doorway, and you want to call down to him from the balcony, Kirk, don't go into the light. As first grade truthers, we're taught not to go into the light. We might not want to go into the light. We'll talk about that some other time. You don't have to pull out your little corn maze map at this point. You'll know what to do because you've done the work here. Anyway, let's not get too sidetracked. Kirk, you son of a beach, don't go into the light. He had the life review. Now there's the light. That is kind of what it's presenting. But remember, is Kirk you? Or is he them? To me, William Shatner and Kirk is more like Jared Kushner, more like Alec Baldwin, not you and me. But it could be saying this is you and me. We have to keep it on the table. Not just going to ignore it because it doesn't line up with my belief set. And it doesn't mean that what's coming from creeps in a Star Trek 10-minute movie is absolute truth either. But here's the real creepy part. At this moment, the dialogue comes, the only time you hear Captain Kirk talk. There are always possibilities, Spock said, and if Genesis is indeed life from death, I must return to this place again. Matt, he says, return to this place again, right when he's about to go into the light? Aha! Yes, right when he's about, okay, relax, it's okay. Matt, this must make you a little scared. Not at all. Relax. Put your feet up. Smoke Peter Stuyvesant if you got him. This doesn't concern me one bit. Then all of a sudden he's in this regular room where Spock is lying ill or about to die. One can assume that this happened when he did proceed then and walk through the light. And that's the only thing that can be assumed. Light was standing before him. He was in some sort of a netherworld. And then boom, now he's in a room with Spock. And out the open window, or maybe it's like a cave of some kind, is a sun coming up. So he's saying goodbye to his old friend, and all the Star Trek fans and the profane in their comments. Oh, you shed a tear. They're so emotional over this. You know what? It's really not that great. You know why people are emotional? Well, because one, if they're real spiritual beings, they sense the truth that's being communicated here. This is like a carrier wave. There are different levels of truth. At the popcorn cruncher level, though, they're upset because it's showing them what once was, and movies and TV shows have been completely and utterly destroyed today, and they no longer have that. And that's worth crying over. I feel their pain. But it's just the last minute or so, or minute and a half, he's holding the hand of Spock. And the CGI or the deepfake is very good, but it's not perfect. You don't really believe it's Spock. It's a little bit off, but it's very impressive. You can see what they're going to be able to do over the next 5 years. And they both look out over a sun. You know, there's a sun which is similar. Is this the Genesis planet, the Genesis device? Is it creating life from lifelessness? There's a lot of different ways to go here. Let's not ignore the obvious presentation is here. Kirk in a black netherworld. After he took what was handed to him, different iterations of himself, a young Kirk, an old Kirk, very similar to the end of 2001, A Space Odyssey. Is that the life review? Maybe. Is that what it's presenting? Maybe. Then the light, the doorway before him, one must assume he walked through. Now he's with his friend again, and they're looking out over the light. And did he enter into another illusion where Spock's now alive and Will the sun coming up, will this restore, per the Genesis device, restore life to Spock? How does this relate to the Cage, the pilot episode? So there's a lot here. Either way, we might not get to the bottom of it, but it is far more layered than what the popcorn cruncher would see watching. It is layered with their esoteric and occult symbolism. Of course it is. Then it ends, and only one sentence has been spoken. It ends 765874 Unification. And then the credits start to roll, and it says, for Leonard Nimoy. And this is, it's all to cover up what it really is. Oh, it's so nice they had to do this for Leonard. Oh, bullcrap. Then you see the credits roll, and there's like 1,000 people involved, or it's an enormous amount of people involved, including all these major companies, to put this 10-minute deep fake AI movie together. You think, well, it's all computer. You'd think, I don't know, 25, 30 people. It's just the credit list. It's as long as a regular movie, almost. Maybe it's not 1,000, but it's just long. And meaning all of this, this is so important to the creeps, what is being presented here. It's not just the fans. Oh, it's such a nice thing. And William Shatner got involved to make a little movie, and after lunch they shot it. No, this is a huge level or degree of importance to creeps. Remember, the number is the Starfleet officer number of that yeoman Colt who appeared briefly in the pilot episode. I showed you pictures of her. So when what wraps up Star Wars is a number. Yeah, again, like, this isn't my thing. Mostly this gematria crap is a waste of time, but I had to do it. So I called Greg. I said, "What 37? What does that mean to you? It doesn't mean anything to me. This isn't my thing." Greg says, "Well, there is something interesting. There's been surveys where if 1,000 people are asked to pick a number between 1 and 100, they pick, I don't know what it said, like 15% pick the same 3 numbers or something like that, and one number that they pick is 37." I thought, that's kind of strange. And Greg kind of knew that off the top of his head. And then I looked it up, and one thing I found said just over 10% of 1,000 respondents picked 37. 10% out of, that's huge, because you can pick, well, obviously Pootie Tang Award, you can pick any number between 1 and 100. Well, we know that, Matt. So then I was on YouTube, and the Boke Precision channel was doing a live chat, and I popped in there and asked those guys what they thought. Those 3 guys know a lot of stuff. And it was interesting. They said, 37 is a prime, and it's one of the, there's a, 37 is a prime and 73 is a prime. And it's the only one in a certain set where it's the mirror image or both primes. 37's a prime, meaning if 14 and, obviously it's not a prime, but if 14 and 41 were both prime, that's just a bad example, but 37 and 73. Well, again, what this means, I thought that was very interesting, what they pointed out, what this means to creeps in terms of the gematria. I don't know. I don't care. But it's interesting. And again, if the close of Star Trek is a number, I think, Matt, if there's anything worth running through the gematria calculator, it's that. I agree. Now, there are a lot of other weird breadcrumbs related to this. Here's the same production company, OTOY, that put out the final Star Trek movie a few days ago. Well, they've been putting these little Star Trek shorts out for years. This one goes back 2 years. It's the same title as what we just looked at, 765874, but that's it. No dash unification. It says it's 32 seconds long. Maybe it would be too obvious if they just made it to 33, but it's only like 18 or 15 seconds long, because there's black screens, there's titles. The video itself, which is AI deepfake, is 15 to 20 seconds, no more. Again, it's this same yeoman Colt, the officer who had a small part in the pilot, who's 765874. That's her officer's number for Starfleet. It's her again. There's some references to Starfleet. They show the Enterprise, then they show her standing in front of the light, just the same way Kirk. This one again goes back 2 years, and then it's the eye symbolism is very similar to the ending, or that 15-minute colorful ending of 2001: A Space Odyssey, where Commander Bowman goes into the black hole. There's thousands of different lights and colors and things flashing, and they keep showing his eyes what he sees, different lights reflecting off his eyes. This same thing happens to Yeoman Colt, again, a minor character in, and it's not, some fan person. It's just fun, Matt. They're just having fun tying everything back to the pilot. No, sorry, not just having fun. This is I couldn't find better images for the end of 2001: A Space Odyssey. But, lots of different lights flash into Bowman's eyes as he enters the black hole or whatever, not just magenta. I guarantee, though, the way the magenta is invading this world, we go back and watch the end of 2001: A Space Odyssey, I would say there'll be much more magenta in all that colorful presentation than you remember. Much more. That's just the way, where this reality is going. The magenta is invading it. Now, if somebody was listening to this for the first time or didn't know this channel, they're upset about the 35 minutes they put in, because this is obviously a channel run by a crazy man. So in summary, Matt, what's the final conclusion? What's the answer? How the hell am I supposed to know? I'll try to pay attention the next time I'm at the Eyes Wide Shut party. But let's just start with the basics. The fans see a very touching tribute. The ending of it brings a tear to the fan. The ending of Star Trek, I see gigantic symbolism embedded by creeps to say something to us, potentially, to say something to themselves, a message to themselves. It's not always about us. It can be to themselves. Does it have to do with returning or recycling or a transition of reality? Yeah, I see all that. We could probably talk about this for a long time. It's not just fun that they related the pilot and an unknown character to the final definitive bow on an entire 60-year series. It's not just for fun. But again, a lot of what they do is for themselves, not for us. If Genesis is indeed life from death, that's the Genesis device, that through the two movies, including The Wrath of Khan, presented it that way, life from death. Now we can go back and watch Khan and maybe have a new set of eyes re-examining what may potentially is being said. Guys, we don't need to know any of this. Let me say 20 seconds. We don't need to know this. We don't need to figure it out. It's all their horseshit. It's fun, though. It's wondrous how this whole reality is laid down, and the creep's role in laying it down is just fascinating to me. You can hear how excited I am in doing this video. It never wears off. To us and who you really are, this is the greatest news of all time. It's the greatest news of all time. We'll talk about that later. Kirk says, I must return to this place. Well, if Kirk is representing you, it's potentially the recycling trap or the Saturn Moon Matrix or the don't go into the light. But what if is Kirk representing them, the Melvin and Bezos type of entity? I'll look to I guess I'm just going to start going round and round because we'll never know. It's fun to ponder, but we don't need to know. Thanks for listening.